Welcome to the Pat White Show. Let's get into it.
This is Sparta!
Hello, everyone, and for lack of a better term, we are going to call this a public service announcement. And once you hear it, you're going to figure out, okay, I understand the concept. As you probably know, you have heard that our mayor, Tom Henry, has been diagnosed with lung cancer. And he indicated it's well along stage 4, I believe. It's already attacked his lymph nodes and moving into other parts of his body, and he said the prognosis is not very good. He's starting chemotherapy this week, and we certainly wished him the very best, but as you know, his wife passed away of cancer about a month ago. And this is very unfortunate for Tom and his family. I've known Tom for many, many years. He and I are very good acquaintances. I wouldn't say we're friends, but we certainly do get along regardless of our political persuasion. We respect each other, been honest with each other, and he has helped me out in situations where I asked for the assistance of his office, and he gave it to me. And so I have a great deal of respect for Tom. But what's going to happen after the unfortunate if he happens to either step down or he passes away while in office? It's a difficult thing to talk about, but I have to do it. Well, here's what goes on. When he leaves office, it'll be up to the Democrat Party here in Fort Wayne to gather all the chairs of all the districts, or the foremen of all the districts, or whoever the district chairmen are, and they get together and they have a confab. And while that confab is going on, a special assistant to the mayor would have to be anointed and sent in as the acting mayor. Now, the reason I know about this is because back in the 1980s, when Moses got himself in a bit of a pickle and was forced to step down because of a legal issue he was involved with, and the person appointed to take his job in the interim as mayor was Cozy Simon, who I knew. And she was the acting mayor until the Democrat Party, which is the way it works in the state of Indiana, the party that's in charge of the city government, which is the Democrat Party right now, they choose a successor to the mayor because there is no vice mayor per se. So they choose a mayor. Well, back in the 80s, when this happened, when Moses was in, their confab met, all the council representatives, the district representatives, and they basically put Win Moses back into office. They said, he's the mayor, we're putting him back into office, regardless of what happened. Well, that's what went on. So what's going to happen in this case is an individual will be appointed as the acting mayor for a period of time while the Democrat Party determines who's going to be the next mayor. It's not an election. It's not a big general election. It's the party in charge makes the decision. Now, that's what's going on. That's how it works, according to my knowledge of state law. If it's something different, fine, you'll let me know. But in the meantime, that's what I know. That's how it's going to happen. Now you know. Coming up next. Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the Pat White Show. Recently, the President of the United States, Joe Biden, had his annual State of the Union speech in Congress. Now, we all know how that went, and obviously it was pretty loud and pretty intense. And there's a lot of heat's been taken for it, but one of the things the president has to do is submit a budget to Congress. Now, I realize the Congress is going to control all the money that's being spent because that's where the spending comes from, the House of Representatives. But the president is obligated to send a budget to Congress. And he did. The budget he proposed was for $7 trillion. T. See? T? $7 trillion. The U.S. doesn't produce in taxes up more than about, close to $3 trillion, I think. I could be wrong on that number, but that's pretty much a guess as to how much taxpayer dollars they collect every year. And you make a budget of $7 trillion? you realize that this country is in debt for $33 trillion. And every time they want to go out and borrow money, your dollar becomes worth less. That's exactly what happened in this administration. They've been passing around money like it's donuts. Free money here, free money there. And all the time telling the Fed, just print more money. The more money they print, the lesser your money is worth. And if you haven't seen that, inflation, that causes inflation. Now they're saying, well, gee, inflation has come down. It's down to around 3%. Well, that doesn't account for what it went up to and how much the prices went up on everything. Anybody who shops for groceries will tell you exactly what that's about. They're paying over 22% more for stuff in the grocery store, in some cases even a whole lot more. Gasoline is still way up there. Mortgage rates are still outrageous. I mean, everything is so expensive now. Anything you want to buy. Back in the old days, when this first came down, they said, well, prices are going to go up because of supply chain issues. Remember that? Prices are going to go up on products because of supply chain issues. And they had to jack the prices up. Well, the supply chain issues are gone. They don't exist anymore. So did the prices come down? Did they? I don't think so. I know a piece of wood that we use. Used to buy it for around $13. Now the same piece of wood costs $39. Nothing different in the wood. Just it costs $39. It used to cost $13. Everything is costing more, and it should come back down to say, well, no, supply issues are gone. They just kept the prices high. That's what we're dealing with. And now you got a president coming in saying, I want to spend $7 trillion on a budget that we only produce about $3 trillion in tax revenue. So how are they going to get it? Well, they're going to raise taxes on the rich. I don't think that's going to amount to a hill of beans because the rich have accountants. The accountants will figure out ways to get around having to pay more money. That's what they do. That's why they're accountants. The rest of us, we're just going to see things go up. Oh, they're going to say, well, it's not in taxes. We're going to raise the fee on this. We're going to raise the fee on that. I mean, don't be surprised if they don't step in and raise the gasoline tax that you pay when you go to the gas station. Increase the taxes on that. Increase the taxes and the fees on everything and anything to raise more money. That's what it's turning into. And if you're getting tired of it, I don't blame you. Most folks in America are getting tired of it. But that's what we're living with, folks. A $7 trillion proposed budget, and we only take in about $3 trillion in taxes. Where are they going to get the other $4 trillion? And what are they going to spend it on? How much money are we spending in the United States that goes outside the United States to places outside the United States and not inside the United States, taking care of the people that need it here? Good question to ask. I don't know the answer. But there's the point. $7 trillion budget by the president, and we only haul in about $3 trillion in taxes. Yes, the House is going to trim that down, but why did he want so much? Coming up next. Hey, this is Pat White again. Welcome to the Pat White Show. If you've been wondering what this massive immigration that we're suffering in the United States is all about, it has now been officially declared in Congress. Now, way back when President Trump was in office, he tried to get the rules changed involving the census. Now, census in America is taken every 10 years. And they use that to determine the number of people in the House of Representatives. There's roughly one representative for every 700,000 residents in the United States. Now, what President Trump wanted to do is to say, hey, want a box in there that says you check if you're a U.S. citizen or not. And if you're not a U.S. citizen, that's an official U.S. citizen, then you're not counted in the census. Tried to get that done when he was in office and unfortunately didn't get it done. Well, now we've had the mass immigration of people coming in, and I mean in the millions. You've heard counts of 8, 10, 15, 20 million. Nobody really knows what the number is. And you really won't know until the census tells you a little something, because that's going to occur in roughly 6 years. Well, the House of Representatives sent over a bill to the Senate saying, hey, here's the deal. in the census upcoming every 10 years, one, you will have to annotate whether you're a U.S. citizen or not on that form. And if you aren't, you are not counted in the official vote getting concept, meaning the number of representatives in the House of Representatives, number of members. So if you're not a U.S. citizen, you do not count in that particular counting when they determine how many people are now in the United States and how many representatives we need in the House of Representatives. Okay, sounds redundant, but it's not. However, the Senate, when a bill went over to the Senate, it was voted down by the Democrats. Not one Democrat voted in favor of doing this. Not one. Now you're beginning to understand what this entire plot was about. From the get-go, and Chuck Schumer admitted it, for crying out loud. From the get-go, it's been getting new potential voters. That's all this was about. It's all it's ever been about. So, since they couldn't get that passed in 2030, no matter who it is, legal, illegal, it doesn't matter, they're going to count them. And if you get, say, 10 million new aliens sign up, put their name in the census and get counted, that's 14 new members of the House of Representatives. If it's 15 million, that's 21 new representatives. And if it's 20 million they count in the census, new people coming in, that's 28 new members of the House. Now, understand something. The Democrats are going very kindly on people coming over the border illegally, very kindly, and you might wonder why. Because they're voters. That's what they're depending on. They're going to give them whatever they want, like Gavin Newsom out in California. Free health care. I mean, he's even trying to get them to be able to vote. They're trying to do the same thing in New York City. Allow them to vote because this is what they want. And in California, when you register to get a driver's license, you're automatically registered to vote. They are looking for new voters. And if they can't get the new voters just yet, on the census, they get a boatload of new representatives. That will completely change the House of Representatives. Let's say all the new representatives are Democrats. If that will completely swing the House of Representatives, probably forever. Maybe not that long, but you know what I'm saying. Because they'll be counted, and that will determine the number of representatives in Congress. And the Democrats are vowing to make sure every single one of them is a Democrat. That's what they want. That's been the entire plan the entire time. This was pulled back in 1987 on Ronald Reagan when he authorized 7 million people to become U.S. citizens because Tip O'Neill conned him. Reagan said it was the worst mistake he ever made. So, count them on the census, increase the House of Representatives, and then when they got the House, they've got the Senate, they can say, you know, send new legislation. We're going to have immigration legislation, and everybody in here gets to be citizens. That's what the plan is. Because once they're citizens, they legally get to vote. And that's what all this is all about, folks. Just so you know, that's the plan. Hey, Pat White here again, and now we're going to be talking about immigration and citizenship. I'll explain these to you in just a second, but take a look at this. As you may have heard, the U.S. government is importing or flying in roughly 30,000 individuals per month. They come from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. 30,000 a month, according to Secretary Mayorkas, are being flown into the United States. They're not coming through the border. They're being flown directly into the United States and, basically almost being given green cards. They've got to have a sponsor. They've got to have be able to show they've got a job and all the other stuff. And 30,000 a month. Now, that's above what's coming across the border illegally, and what they're saying anywhere between 15 million. Nobody is really sure how many people are coming in. But let me tell you what the plot is. Let me tell you what the plan is. All right. All those people coming in are eventually in 6 years. All of those people eventually coming in 6 years will be counted in the United States Census. That's because a ruling was done that Trump was trying to overturn and say, no, it's got to be American citizens only to be counted in the census. But he was overruled on that, and I don't know by whom or what, but they're going to count everybody in the census. Legal, illegal, you get counted. Let's say you get 8 million new people coming in. I'm just going to say, 10 million. Okay, 10 million, fine. 10 million. That will be added to the census count, and for every 700,000 of those 10 million, you get a new U.S. congressman. Yep. For every 700,000 illegals that come in, according to the census, which is taken every 10 years, you get a new member of Congress. Now, let's say you get 15, 20 members of Congress, new members of Congress coming in, and let's say they're all Democrats. Do you understand what's going to happen? The Democrats will be able to take control of the House and potentially, and I'm just using the word potentially, never give it up. And if they've got control of the House and ultimately get control of the Senate, now the Senate can only have 2 people, right? So you get 100 there. Unless you bring in some other new states like Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. Once they get absolute control of the Senate, absolute control of the House, and then absolute control of the presidency, here's what's going to happen in citizenship. Way back in 1987, Tip O'Neill conned Ronald Reagan, the President of the United States, into accepting into citizenship 7 million illegals in 1987. 7 million. And Reagan later on, the next year, said it was the dumbest decision, the worst decision he ever made. But he did that because Tip O'Neill conned him. Tip O'Neill was his friend, apparently. So you bring in another 700,000 illegals through the census, get yourself 10, 15 new electoral or U.S. Senate seat or U.S. House seats. Democrats control the House, the Senate, and the presidency forever. It's a tough thing to say, and I hate saying it, but here's something you need to know. Eventually, those illegals are going to want to vote, and certain states and certain cities are starting to let them do that. You know, in California, if you get your driver's license, in California, you're automatically registered to vote. You get a driver's license, you're registered to vote. New York wanted to have illegals vote in the local elections. Now, local elections, they can actually do that. But eventually, they're going to change the rules to say they can vote in national elections and not even be citizens of the United States, or turn them into citizens, and bingo, they get to vote anyway. Either way, that's the plan. Always has been the plan. You may not like the plan, but now you know what the plan is. Bring them in, count them in the census, increase the number of representatives in the House for your party, and ultimately take control of the country and never give it back. That's my opinion. Don't know what yours is. Let's see how it plays out. See ya. Coming up next. And welcome back into the Pat White Show. We're going to be talking about something that I kind of hate getting into, but eventually you got to get into politics whether you like it or not, and especially the politics of the 2024 presidential election. If you watch the State of the Union message, you may have noticed, at least part of it, where President Biden lashed out at the Supreme Court big time. I mean, face to face. And he did that. He hit out after them for taking the Roe v. Wade decision and negating it. Because the Supreme Court said, hey, there's nothing in the Constitution that says anything about the right to an abortion in the Constitution. And frankly, they're right. There's nothing in the Constitution that allows that. So what the Supreme Court did was say, okay, Anything in the Constitution that's not in there goes back to the states. That's where it belongs. And that's exactly what they did. That's where it belongs. States that want to have abortion can have it. States that don't, they don't have to. It's whatever the voters in their state want. Okay? Whatever the representatives of that states decide to vote on. Now, that's not good enough for the Biden administration, because he said in that State of the Union, female voters would soon, the wrath of female voters would soon be seen. And I'll tell you exactly, that is the platform for the Democrats in 2024. Republicans are going with the influx of folks across the border, the immigration situation, and the economy. That's what the Republicans are going to go on. Democrats got nothing but one thing left: abortion. And that's going to be their key. I can almost guarantee it. You're going to see it. And there's a reason for it. Because in 2020 and 2022, that's the issue they ran on, and they won. Why did they win? Because they were dealing with women. Now, women make up half the population, right? Not all women are of childbearing years, but those who are being chided into voting, and they will vote because they don't want the government telling them that they can't get an abortion if they want to, and then the party is going to say, stick with us, we're going to turn it back into federal law, that abortion will be legal nationwide federally. I don't see how they can do that, because the Supreme Court's already done that, unless they want to pack the Supreme Court and overrule the Supreme Court. That wouldn't surprise me. So, let's say you get a lot of women deciding to vote for Biden because he's going to put abortion back in. You know who else is going to vote for it? Men. That's right. Men between the ages of 18 and 54 are going to say, hey, I want that back in there in case I get somebody pregnant. You think that sounds funny? It's not. That's exactly the way many men are thinking in that age demographic, especially the younger men. I don't want to get somebody pregnant, and if they do, hey, we want to have abortion just to make sure that we're not liable for a kid that we don't want. Now, that sounds cruel, but folks, that's what we're dealing with in the 2024 election. Now, some of you are going to say, no, there's no way they're going to run on that. I'm telling you right now, I saw the platform during the State of the Union. That's exactly what he said. And when he veered away from his reading on the teleprompter, he was talking to the Supreme Court. He said, with all due respect, justices, women are not without electoral or political power. He just told you in that phrase, here's what we're going to do, and we're going to run our campaign on abortion in 2024. If enough women and enough men decide, hey, we're going with Joe on this one because we want abortion regardless of who's running the party, they're going to win the election. Just saying. Now, some will say I'm wrong. You're entitled to your opinion. But let's wait and see what happens. Let's wait and see what the party platform is in 2024. And I say the number one issue in the Democrats is going to be abortion. My opinion, I'm sticking to it. Let's see what happens and see if I'm right or wrong. Coming up next. Hello, everyone, and welcome into this segment of the Pat White Show, because right now we're going to be talking about something that is affecting maybe a lot of folks in the country. Maybe you're one of those folks. It's called TikTok. It is a social media website that is very popular with hundreds of millions of Americans, apparently. People who have TikTok love TikTok. I do not have TikTok. I'll be honest with you, just straight up. I don't have it, don't need it, and don't want it. But other members of my family do have TikTok and do like TikTok. Well, it turns out that certain states in the United States, the governments of those states have banned state employees from utilizing TikTok on their state-owned computers. And now there's been a big push in the Congress of the United States to outlaw TikTok totally. Now, Congress has said federal employees can't have TikTok on their computers. I don't know how they could prove that, but, it is what it is. But now they are trying to ban it or say the owners of TikTok need to have American owners and not owners in China. Now, this is something you may not know. TikTok is actually owned by an organization in China which is controlled by the Chinese government. State control. Most entities in China are state controlled by the government. But TikTok is one of the major ones that is actually ultimately controlled by the Chinese government. And there's concern that they are trying to manipulate TikTok in certain ways, and the things they show you and the things they want you to see. They push into your particular batch of stuff that you get. And they're trying to undermine the United States. And it's being done by subversion. And they say TikTok is the issue. So Congress has been talking about outlawing TikTok in America until they get rid of their ownership, or else banning it from the United States. Which I'm not sure how they could do that, frankly, because to me it seems to be like a First Amendment situation, freedom of speech. However, here's the interesting part. Washington, D.C., the offices of the congressmen and congresswomen have been deluged. And I use the word deluge lightly. Deluged by people calling in and complaining and telling Congress, do not outlaw TikTok. The vast majority of these people calling in are under the age of 21. Many of them are under the age of 18 and cannot vote because they are too young. So the young crowd in America, the Generation Z, whatever they call themselves, is calling into Congress and demanding that the TikTok not be made illegal. Well, I'm not sure that could happen, but I can tell you that, like I say, a number of states have outlawed it on their employees' computer systems. Could it happen to the company that you work for? I don't know. But could it happen in Congress? Would Congress have the chutzpah to ban a particular site that I believe that probably would be overturned by the Supreme Court if it got there, having to do with freedom of speech, because that's what TikTok is. Just something you should know about. That's what's happening in your world. Teenagers are flooding Congress saying, don't get rid of our TikTok. And China's running the rodeo. Just so you know. A little bit more information you get right here on The Pat White Show. See ya. Coming up next. Hello, everyone, and welcome back into The Pat White Show. We're going to be talking about California and electricity. Two things that, one, if you live in California, it's going to mean something to you. And two, electricity. And we all have to use electricity, right? I mean, let's face it, everything works on electricity nowadays, except maybe your stove. But obviously, there are people out who want to make sure that works strictly on electricity, but that's another story. But let me tell you what's going on in the state of California. Governor Newsom, this is Gavin Newsom, the guy who wants to be president of the United States. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Here's somebody who has a philosophy about things that if given the opportunity, he will foist it down your throat and my throat if he were ever to be in charge of the United States of America. Bad enough for the folks in California, but hey, America? Don't think so. Well, here's the deal. Gavin Newsom is ordering the state of California to be, energy efficient, namely not using fossil fuels to generate electricity by the year 2030. Now, 2030 is what, 6 years away? Not a very long time. Well, he wants to get rid of fossil fuel as used to make electricity. He wants to shift into solar and wind power. Now, I want you to put something into perspective here. You and I pay around 18 cents, I believe it is, per kilowatt hour, roughly, somewhere in that area. California pays over 32 cents per kilowatt hour. And they're in California. Same country? Pretty much electricity is electricity, right? People in California are paying about twice what you and I pay. Well, since they want to switch everything over from fossil fuels to solar and wind, that's going to be very, very costly. Very costly. I'm not sure it's going to work anyway, but that's my opinion. But here's the deal. To do this, they're going to have to raise electric rates. And let me tell you how Gavin Newsom has decided to raise electric rates on people in California. If you earn your family income is $70,000 a year or more, under the new plan put in by Gavin Newsom for the state of California, you will pay an additional $75 a month for your electricity. So regardless of whatever the electricity cost, you're going to be paying another $75 on top of that. It's the wealth tax. Although I don't think, a family income of $70,000 is very wealthy, in my opinion. So what they're doing is they're going to be selling electricity based upon your wealth or lack thereof. Now, think about this. In order to figure out how much you earn, you will be required to provide your income tax information to the state of California. That's right. They will want to see your tax return to determine exactly how much more you're going to be paying for electricity than someone in lower income strata. Imagine your tax return now floating all around the state of California so they can determine how much you make and how much more they're going to charge you for the same electricity that everybody else uses. Now, if you don't live in California, you're lucky. But keep in mind that Gavin Newsom wants to be president of the United States. It's his state where they're doing this. It's his mandate where they're doing this. Imagine what would happen if he became president of your United States. Just a thought. It's right here on the Pat White Show. See ya. Coming up next. Well, hello, folks, and welcome back to the Pat White Show. We're getting into politics this time, namely California politics, but it has a bigger meaning if you look down the road a ways. Well, out in California, Governor Newsom just announced that, his this new bill that he put out, a FAST Act, I believe it's called, where employees of fast food restaurants, or restaurants in general, would get a minimum starting wage of $20 per hour. Now, it had been $16 an hour, but it was going to go up to $20 an hour. Now, except a particular company was exempted from having to pay $20 an hour. They're saying, wait a minute, how'd that happen? There's a headline. Newsom sparks outrage over new minimum wage exemption benefiting donor critics demand probe of crooked deal. Now, what's he talking about? Turns out that Panera Bread, now you may be familiar with Panera Bread, probably eaten there, had a bowl of soup, whatever. Panera Bread has been exempted from having to pay a $20 minimum wage in California. Are you saying, wait a minute, why Panera Bread? Because, according to the new law, Panera makes its own bread and sells bread. And since they make bread and sell bread, they are carved out of the income tax or the minimum wage requirement. They only have to pay $16 an hour. Everybody else gets to pay $20 an hour, except Panera. You don't have to. Now, why would they get exempted? Well, it turns out that Greg Flynn is the billionaire owner of Panera Bread, Taco Bell, Pizza Huts, Wendys, and a plethora of other fast food locations in the state of California. And he has donated a boatload of money, 6 figures, to Gavin Newsom. You're saying, what? Are you telling me this guy bought Newsom? Well, I didn't say bought. Newsom said, well, it's political sausage making. It ain't political sausage making, it's taking a bribe. You see, Greg Flynn also bailed Newsom out with a whole bunch of money when the state was trying to knock him out of office on a referendum. And he put a lot of money into that campaign, as well as George Soros did too, just so you know. But anyway, now in the new law in California, Panera Bread has been exempted from having to pay $20 an hour. Now, I just wonder how many people they're going to be able to attract when everybody else is making $20 an hour and the employees at Greg Flynn's restaurants are making 16. Wonder how that's going to work itself out. Just thought you might want to know. And critics are demanding saying crooked deal. Well, Newsom's excuse, hey, you got to make sausage. You don't like it? Tough. And you know what? He can get away with it. Just saying. More news you need to know about the inside of politics and possibly the next president of the United States. Just saying. See ya. Coming up next. Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the Pat White Show for another, a discussion, if you will. And here's one that has to do with probably one of our favorite fast food restaurants, which happens to be Wendy's. Well, the CEO of Wendy's came out and spoke to the media a while back, and he said, hey, we're going to be spending about $20 million in the next couple of years to install digital menu boards in our restaurants around the United States. Now, digital means that you can put anything up there you want and you can change it in an instant. And that includes pricing. And so he goes on to say, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to practice dynamic pricing. And people went, what? Dynamic pricing? He said, oh, yeah. He said, you ever get an Uber? And let's say it's raining, the weather's bad, and it's rush hour. Everybody wants an Uber, right? Well, so what Uber does is they jack up the price during those heavy impact times. They run the price up, and so what normally would cost you, say, $25, $30 can now cost you $50 for the same ride to the same place. Airlines do this and have been doing it for years. If you call ahead for a flight really early, say a couple of months down the road, price is low. Closer you get to the price of the airline trip actually happen, your price goes up. And if you get it the next day, price is really up, dynamic pricing. Well, that's what Wendy's was talking about doing, changing the price based upon demand time. So let's say you go to Wendy's at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and a burger costs you $3. You go to Wendy's, say, at 5 o'clock, between 5 and 6 p.m., that same burger may cost you $4 to $6. Dynamic pricing. Well, that rumor got around pretty quickly. It spread around, and everybody went, what? Well, a spokesman for the CEO came out and said, well, he sort of misspoke. That's not really what we're doing. We're looking at pricing situations. He was just trying to cover the CEO's butt because the CEO spoke the truth. And the spokesman is trying to cover it up and say, no, we're not really going to be doing that, in hopes that a couple of years from now, you won't remember what he said. But Wendy's is going through with a digital boards, which can be changed the pricing at a moment's notice. That's what's coming up. Now, will they play that hand? I don't know. But if you're a Wendy's fan, be cautious, because if it starts with Wendy's, it could go to every other restaurant, and every other concept should be demand pricing. The moment everybody wants it, that's the moment they jack up the price. Won't be just restaurants and Uber. It could be everything. That's what you're facing, folks. Just thought I'd pass that along to you to make your day a little bit better. And that's my opinion on that. Now on to other things. Coming up next. Well, if you're looking for one of those stories that makes you go, huh? I got one for you. This one came out of CNBC, happened last week, and the president of Kelloggs Cereals, the guy's name is Gary Pilnick. I personally don't know him, but he's the CEO of Kellogg's, and they make things like Frosted Flakes and Fruit Loops and Corn Flakes and Raisin Bran and a whole bunch of other cereals. Well, anyway, he came out of this interview and said, the high cost of groceries people are spending right now, The fact that people are spending roughly 11% of their entire earnings on groceries, which is the highest it's been in like 30 years, maybe longer. It used to be like 2-3%, well, 4% at the most. Now it's 11%. But anyway, he said, "Hey, folks, you're spending too much money on groceries, and you know it's costing too much, so start eating cereal for dinner." You heard me right. He said, start eating cereal for dinner. Hey, forget about chicken one night. Have yourself a box of Post Toasties or Wheaties or Cheerios. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, let's see. I tell the wife and kids, honey, today we're not eating chicken, we're not eating pork, we're not even eating hamburger helper, for God's sakes, because it's so much. Hey, everybody get a bowl, and we're having Frosted Flakes for dinner. That's where we are, folks. That's where this economy has taken us. 4 years ago, you were using about 4% of your annual income or your monthly, weekly income, whatever you're banking on, for food items, shopping at the grocery. Now you're spending 11%, and it keeps going up. I know, because I went to the grocery store today and I went, really? It cost me that much? I bought a few things and it cost me $36. Thing of chicken, one chicken breast was $3.79. One chicken breast. That's how things have gotten. And the CEO of Kelloggs says, eat more cereal. Hey, lose the chicken, eat cereal. It'd be funny if it wasn't. And it ain't funny. Things, folks, are not going really well. And if someone in Washington, D.C. wants to blow smoke up your skirt saying, oh, the economy is wonderful, inflation's coming down. You know what? You and I both know it. It ain't. The price of everything we're buying costs more every single doggone day, and it ain't getting better. It's getting worse. And I wonder what the CEO of Kelloggs Cereal had for dinner at his home last night. I'm betting you it wasn't Frosted Flakes. My take on it, now you know how I feel. See ya. Coming up next. Hello, everyone, and what do you say instead of talking about politics or anything downer, let's talk about something that you might enjoy. Well, it's called sports. Or better yet, if you're a football fan, how about if we call it Chicago Bears sports? That's right, the venerable Chicago Bears. Now, I'm a fan of the Bears, I admit that. 1986 was probably the greatest football team I think I personally ever seen. And I still have a videotape of that game. Not that I could play it, because I can't, but I still have a videotape of that game, because it was one of the greatest football games I've ever witnessed. Well, anyway, as you probably heard, the Bears are tired of being kicked around Chicago at Soldier Field, because Soldier Field is frankly, it isn't fantastic, okay? Yes, it was dedicated originally to the veterans who served in the original Chicago Stadium, and they had to rebuild it and bring it up and make it look like a toilet seat or whatever they did to accommodate more people for the game. And that's what the NFL wanted. But it's still the old Soldier Field. Well, the Bears decided that, hey, we're tired of this. So they went looking for new land, and outside of Chicago, they found Arlington Park. It's a racetrack. And they bought it for a number of millions of dollars. And we're planning on building an all-new stadium, a dome stadium, in Arlington Park. Well, until the people in Arlington Park decided to figure out what the taxes on that property was going to be, because taxes are money, revenue. And they were seeing a windfall of revenue coming to their community, and the Bears are going, no, we ain't going to pay that. We ain't going to do that. So what the Bears wanted and what Arlington Park was willing to give them were two separate numbers, and they were not even close. Well, as strangely as it would happen, the Bears just announced that they will contribute $2 billion. You heard me right, $2 billion to build a brand new dome stadium on the lakefront in Chicago, just south of Soldier Field. You heard me right. the Bears are willing to offer $2 billion. That's a lot of money to the city and for their building a brand new covered dome south of Soldier Field. Now, let me explain to you. Soldier Field would be demolished except for the colonnades honoring the veterans. They would turn all that into park space and recreation and, like ball fields or whatever. And they're building the new stadium south of where Soldier Field is now. Now, to me, parking has always been an issue in Chicago and still will be, but apparently they're going to figure this out. But building a new stadium in Chicago on the riverfront would be a monster. And imagine all the events that could be held in Chicago: basketball contests, NCAA championships, Super Bowls, Big Ten championships, which are currently held, I believe, in Indianapolis at the indoor stadium there. Now, but Chicago, that could be dominant. That could be a place where every championship you could think of would be held there, because Chicago is basically the center of the country. Big city, on the lake, lots of stuff going on, $2 billion. Now, no renderings have been provided yet, but now you know exactly what's going on in the city of Chicago. The Bears are offering $2 billion, with a B, to build a brand new covered stadium, a dome, south of Soldier Field in Chicago. Will it happen? I don't know. But now you know what's going on. And the Bears may not be moving to Arlington Park after all, because they didn't want to pay the taxes out there. And will Chicago give them a better deal tax-wise? Oh, you can almost bet on it. My thoughts. Don't know what your thoughts are, but if you're a Bears fan, you might be happy. That's all I got for you. See ya. Coming up next. Hello, everyone. Welcome into the Pat White Show. We're talking about basketball in this particular segment and the term Midnight Madness. Now, we've all heard that term used at one time or another, and of course, it's on the media all the time. Did you ever wonder where it came from? Well, it turns out it was first coined back in 1939 by a high school sports administrator by the name of Henry H.V. Porter. Now, he's from Illinois, and that's where all this sort of stuff happened in 1939. Its first known use of the phrase, which is now associated with NCAA basketball, was back in March of 1939 when Porter was writing, if you will, a thing called March Madness essay for the Illinois High School Athletic Magazine. He was a writer, and his job was to write articles, and that's what he did. He traveled all around the state of Illinois writing articles about the basketball in the month of March, called it March Madness. Well, many years later, the NCAA decided, that thing is worth a lot of money, and they trademarked it. Yes, that's correct. Here's a gentleman who coined the term March Madness as a high school sports administrator back in 1939. Now, he did enter the Basketball Hall of Fame back in 1960, but his term was, confiscated, for lack of a better term, and now March Madness has gone everywhere around the United States. It's a catchphrase, if you will, for the wider culture of sports in America, better known as March Madness, the NCAA championships. So, if you wonder where it came from, now you know it originated in the state of Illinois, because back then they were basketball crazy. But so was Indiana. And everybody remembers, Indiana, Hoosiers, the movie, how all it used to be is a single class basketball game back in the old days. Now, obviously, we switched over to classes, and a lot of people still do not like classes, but more kids get to say, hey, I'm a state champion than one school did way back years ago. Some would argue it's good, some would argue it's bad, but like I said, more kids get to say they're state champions because we now have class basketball and class football in the state of Indiana. Matter of fact, we have class everything in the state of Indiana. So, if you wonder where it came from, H.V. Porter, 1939, as a Illinois athletics administrator, a writer, went driving around the state of Illinois and coined the term March Madness. A little something you didn't need to know, but you found out thanks to the Pat White Show. See ya. Coming up next. Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the Pat White Show. We're going to talk about things that make you go, In particular, colors. Well, I don't know if you've ever noticed it or not. For those of you that drive around, say, the north side of the city of Fort Wayne, where the Parkview Hospital is, and maybe other parts of the city, or someone who drives around the landscape and canyons and rivers and things, power lines, you'll see power lines everywhere. We all see them. But you ever notice there are these orange balls that are stuck on the power lines? They look like big orange balls. Like somebody took some rubber balls and stuck them onto the power lines. You ever say to yourself, what are those? And why are they there? Well, interestingly enough, they're there because the FAA says they have to be there. Why? Because airplanes, especially low-flying airplanes and helicopters, it is very, very difficult to see a power line when you're flying, especially when you're flying right toward it. You need something that shows the depth, and those orange balls then literally can be seen by the pilots of aircraft. You go up near Parkview Hospital on the north side of Fort Wayne, and you'll see all the power lines that go over near the hospital. You'll see all those orange balls attached to the wires. Those are plastic orange balls. They average about 36 inches in diameter and weigh somewhere between 11 and 17 pounds each. And they're attached to the wire just so pilots can see them as they fly. And it takes away some of the danger, but this is mandated by the FAA. Okay, so now we know what the orange balls mean when you see them on the lines. Let's give you another thing that you'll see in the supermarket. So I'm over at the supermarket and I'm buying some tangerines. I like tangerines. They're tasty. Well, you notice tangerines and oranges and things, fruits like that, they're all in orange bags. You ever ask yourself, why are tangerines and oranges in orange bags? Because it makes them look even more orange. That's right. Grocers know the color orange in an orange bag will make what's inside look even more orange. It's a trick your eyes play on you. I was over then looking at the lemons and the limes. Guess what color bags they put those things in? It's designed to make the fruits inside look even more radiant and more dark in the color of the bag that surrounds it. That's the game that's being played. And this is how it works in the supermarket world. You know, you're going to see all sorts of things that are designed to fool your eye and make you see something you're not necessarily seeing. So when you go to the grocery store the next time, you're going to see the orange bag, the orange mesh bag for your oranges. You're going to say, well, now I know why it's orange. It's to make the oranges look brighter, better. Now I know why the lemons look the way they do. The limes look the way they do. And now you know why the orange balls that you see on power lines are there. A little bit more education. Not just politics on the Pat White Show. We teach you some stuff you need to know. That's it for today. See ya. Well, that does it for today's edition of the Pat White Show. Thanks for tuning in, and make sure to follow us on social media for the latest Pat White Show, for all the news and updates. And stay tuned for brand new episodes of the Pat White Show coming real soon. Like what you're hearing? Make sure you don't miss an episode by following the Pat White Show on Spotify. Just search for the Pat White Show, hit follow, and get ready for insightful conversations delivered straight to your Spotify feed. If you enjoy watching podcasts as much as listening to them, good news! The Pat White Show is also on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel now for visual content, behind-the-scenes footage, and full podcast experience. Find us on YouTube at the Pat White Show channel.
Happy